everybody. I hope you're excited for today's project. We are going to be painting this simple landscape. This technique is glazing. We talked about it when we did watercolor techniques. We're just gonna paint this whole background and then we're slowly gonna paint these mountains in and then these trees. And what we're really doing is creating a sense of depth on our paper. So we have these far objects in the background, and then we have these objects that are kind of in the middle ground, and then these trees are in the foreground. And as things get further away from you, they start to get a little bit lighter, the colors are more dull, they get smaller. One thing that I think would be helpful for you is look out your window, wherever you are, and try to see what happens as things get further away from you. It's a great way to understand what's happening in this. And also, when you're creating artwork, it's good to understand how things work as they get further away, what changes about their physical appearance. And so that's what we're going to be painting today. And you can use one color, you can use whatever color you want. You don't have to paint this in blue. I might not use yellow, but I've seen it done and it looked really cool. But a darker color is gonna work a little bit better, like purple or blue, even black or brown. But I don't know about, the lighter colors are just a little bit harder to see, and when you paint these trees in front, like if that was yellow, it would be hard to see, even if the background was really light yellow. But I've seen you do amazing things, so it may work. One tip I was going to give you before we start though, is in between these layers, you have to wait for it to dry. And while you're waiting for it to dry, I would take your other piece of paper, since this is really half, right? This is like half of a sheet of paper. Take your other half and you can start painting whatever you want on that half. And I will show you some different tree techniques. But you could really paint whatever you want. It's totally up to you. But you have some paint mixed up, so you might as well just experiment with it. And I'll show you how to paint a tree, a few different tree techniques while you're waiting. So let's get started. All right, just like our last watercolor lesson, you want to set your watercolors up on the right side if you're right-handed and on the left side if you're left-handed. And the first thing we're going to do is the same thing we did in the other videos. We're going to tape a border around this to keep it down and to keep it where we want it to be, also to create a nice frame. So just grab your tape if you have it and put it around there. If you don't have tape, you can also just draw with pencil a border around it, or just not have one at all. All right, make sure you kind of press the tape down a little bit around the edges. So just kind of seal it and just kind of press the edges of it down a little bit. Okay, this is a great lesson in glazing. Remember we talked about glazing when we did watercolor techniques? We're going to be using that technique to create a scene of some mountains. So you need your watercolor paints, your watercolor paper, and we are going to be using two brushes this time, a flat brush and a smaller round brush. And paper towel and water, so you need those two things. And you can choose what color you want to paint this landscape. We're going to be doing a monochromatic landscape. So that means we're using one color. And so you can choose whether you want that to be blue or purple or black or brown. You can do it in the lighter colors. I've seen it in those, but if you do it in yellow, it's going to be really hard to see. So I would choose something on this side of your watercolors, but you could choose something over there. You guys are always breaking the boundaries and changing things, and it always looks great. So we want to paint a background on this whole entire paper. So we are going to tweate the biggest puddle we have created yet. So dip your paintbrush in your water and add water to your tray. You can also use a little like squeezer thing if you want to just drop it in, or like eyedropper. But we are just slowly adding that, making a giant puddle. And we're going to be using this puddle for the whole painting. Maybe. I think we will. Once you get that puddle pretty big, you can choose your color. And it doesn't, when I say monochromatic, that doesn't mean you can't add another color to this puddle. Like if you're using blue, sometimes I just like to add a little bit of brown just to kind of like soften it up, make it maybe a little bit more gray. And you'll think it's like so dark, right? It looks so dark, and then you touch it on your paper towel and look how light that is. That's great. That's kind of exactly what we want. So mix up your color, make sure you have enough. Make sure your brush is just full of it, and we're gonna paint a flat wash on this whole piece of paper. You could actually paint a darker area and get a little bit lighter if you wanted to as well. So remember, we're just slightly overlapping our line. You don't want to scrub your watercolor paper. That means like scratching it with your brush and going over it more than once. You want to be careful or your watercolor paper will get ruined and your painting will be ruined. So just be gentle with it and you're just covering that paper. And we're gonna let this dry. Now, I know it's kind of long to wait in between these steps. So what I would do in between these steps is you have another piece of paper, right? Because this is actually half of a sheet. You could do some cool things on this. I can even show you a really cool technique just while we're waiting for painting a tree. And I don't know why I grabbed purple. That was kind of a weird choice. So you can start with the green part or you can start with the brown part. I'm just gonna kind of start, it's probably better to start with the green. So I'm just gonna mix up some green in my tray right here. Maybe 2 colors of green, why not? This is the nice thing with watercolor. It does take some time to dry, but while it's drying, you can just work on something else. This is great. All right, so we're gonna paint the shape of the top of our tree first. So just kind of like, these are the branches. Maybe your tree's taller, maybe it's rounder. These are the leaves, I mean. And I guess the lighter color should be towards the top, like where the sun's hitting it. So you can grab that color with a little bit more yellow and you can either touch it into those areas or just start painting it. And maybe there's like some bluer areas down here where it's kind of in the shadows. And then you can go ahead and grab a brown for your tree trunk. I did add a little blue. And then you can just and it's okay if it bleeds, right? You just let it happen. That's the nice thing with watercolor. And something, I remember my 4th grade teacher taught this to me. I'm just gonna hurry and show you. When you're painting a tree, she just told me to make a bunch of Ys and it really helped me get that in. So I just keep like kind of creating Ys depending on the tree. But I found that helpful. While this is drying also, let's just figure out how to paint some pine trees because we are going to be doing that in this lesson. So let's just practice while we're waiting. So there's a few ways you can do it. One of the ways I like to do it is just to start at the top of my tree and I just start making some brush strokes down. And pine trees are so different, but I try to just get a little bit bigger as I go down. So there's that kind of pine tree. There's also like the pine trees where it's like kind of like flat and then it like has, I don't know, these remind me of like a Dr. Seuss tree. Like has the trunk and then it kind of goes out. Or I've seen people even do them like with lines out like that, like just out, which is kind of cool. Okay, I think we're almost dry enough to do our mountains. But while you wait, really, just kind of practice and paint some cool things over here. All right, this background's pretty dry, so I'm just gonna grab my brush. I'm dipping it right in that same blue color. I might add a tiny bit more blue, just a little bit, because we want these to be just like a hint of some mountains. And the mountains, we are just gonna freehand it, but just kind of think about some mountains maybe you've seen. Think about the tops of them. Are they like plateaus? Are they big granite topped mountains? And we're gonna paint those in right now. So dip your brush in the water. This is going to be something that's in the distance, so it's not going to be as bright. So think about the mountains. And then you're just gonna take that color and paint and glaze down the whole sheet. And then we're gonna let that layer dry. And this layer shouldn't take as long. If it's hard to wait for this to dry, you can ask a trusted adult or someone who can use a blow dryer to help speed up the process. All right, that layer dried pretty quickly. So now we're going to add another layer on top of that. We're going to add another layer actually of some mountains. So I'm just dipping back in that same color and I'm gonna go over it again. Actually, it's not that same color. I am adding just a little bit more blue. So you can add a little bit more of whatever color you were using to start with. And then let's add some more mountains in front of these ones. And then fill it in all the way to the bottom. So you can do as many layers of these mountains as you would like. You could do 1, 2, 3. You could add another layer after this. I think we'll just keep this one 3 layers, and then we'll go ahead and add our trees after this layer right here is dry. Or maybe we'll just add maybe one shorter one. Just one more, and then we will start our trees. So again, I'm just gonna use my blow dryer to speed this up. I don't want it to blow my paint around. Also, while you're waiting for it to dry and you're practicing some of those trees, maybe to you, that is a pine tree. Just these triangle shapes, and that's great. You don't have to do something. This is a little bit advanced, but it's still, I figure some of you might be ready for this, whether you're 5 or 55. All right, let's grab that color again. Let's add a little bit more blue, and not purple, a little bit more brown. And we need our flat brush. And let's add this last layer of some mountains. So do we want them to keep coming in this angle? Yeah, I think so. And then after this layer is dried, then we're going to put our trees on top. And that's a really, really fun layer, because how you do your trees is totally up to you, and there's a bunch of different ways to make them look. I think we'll just put 3 trees on here. So we'll have like a tall one, a short one, and then like a medium one over here. But you need to make sure that this layer is dry before you do it. So again, grab your scratch piece of paper, just do some practices while you wait. Try to paint some trees, maybe like a palm tree, I don't know. We did just draw that palm tree. Maybe we could try to paint it. And remember, don't worry if your paints bleed. It's fine. You just kind of let it happen. I think it looks cool. How you can tell if this is dry or not is if it's shiny, it's wet. If it's not shiny, it is dry. All right, now we want this layer to be really dark. So I might actually paint one more puddle over here with my blue and my brown. And this could be bright blue. So let's start painting our trees. I'm gonna paint the tallest tree right here in this corner. So here we go. So I'm just making these lines pointed down and kind of curving out. And if I get to this edge, I'm just gonna paint right over it, because these trees are right in front of us. And if the background starts to get darker than our trees, we know that we need to add more color to our puddle. Might just be because that area is a little bit dark still, or wet. Yeah, you can just paint right over your tape. Don't worry about it. Don't let it stop you. And then let's go ahead and put maybe a little tree next to it. And let's come over here and maybe we'll just put like a little medium-sized tree. This landscape only exists in our head. So you cannot paint these wrong, because there is no right. So just keep painting those brush strokes. I'm just kind of lifting up as I pull away, and that's kind of what's making these look pointy. But remember, there is no wrong or right way to paint this. This is your landscape in your head. All right, there we have it. So now you have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. So these are closest to us, they're brightest. If there were colors, they would be the brightest and boldest and clearest. And then as things move away, they just get a little bit more faded, less bright. So let this dry and then take your tape off. I'm gonna take my tape off before it's dry, just because it's super hard for me to wait. Is it hard for you? I don't know, maybe. If it is, you can do it, but sometimes that paint will run onto the outside edge. All right, how did that go? I hope that you enjoyed it and that waiting for it to dry was not too hard. And hopefully it gave you some time to paint something that you really, really wanted to paint. Now I'm going to give you your assignment. So remember, what we did was called glazing. Now I'm going to give you the assignment to create another landscape, but you can create whatever kind of landscape you would like. There's a lot of different kinds depending on where you live or whatever you like. Think about Antarctica is a cool landscape, maybe with the ocean in front of it. The Hawaiian landscape is going to be a little bit different than the landscape in Alaska, or you know, wherever you might be in the whole world, than India or China, or you know, wherever you are, the landscapes change. So what I want you to do is take this technique and paint a landscape. And if you're painting a city, you could do the same thing with city buildings too. You know, you start with the ones that are furthest away and paint them light. And as they move closer to you, you want them to get a little bit darker. And so my tips for this is going to be create something in the background, an object, whether that's a mountain or buildings, a middle ground, and then a foreground. So something in the front, something in the middle, and something that's further away. And you're gonna start with the furthest away. So you start with the sky and then slowly move to what's closer to you as you're painting. Have fun, and I can't wait to see your work. Have a great day.